From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. And coming up for you today, out of Iowa State University, Lee Schulz. With this week's cattle market segment, he'll talk about the cattle-to-hog price ratio as an indicator of spillover support for cattle prices from the soaring hog market. And he'll look at the current demand for grass cattle for summer stocking. Then our Britton Rucker visits with K-State's Bob Weaber about several post-calving management considerations for you cow-calf producers, including cow nutritional management ahead of spring breeding and what to do when a bull doesn't pass a breeding soundness examination. And on this week's 4-H segment, Jeff Wickman visits with K-State's Beth Hinshaw about the upcoming 4-H Campference. Plus more right here on Agriculture Today.
Hamburgers, roast, ribs, steak, or whatever you prefer. Beef, it's what's for dinner. Kansas cattle farmers produce 7.5 million head of cattle per year. It takes about 7 tablespoons of peanut butter to get the same amount of protein in 1 serving of lean beef. Support your local Kansas farmers and ranchers. Eat beef. This message was brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
Good to have you along with us for another Agriculture Today here on the K-State Radio Network. For our cattle market segment this week, we bring in via phone Lee Schulz. He is a livestock economist out of Iowa State University. Lee, eventually we'll talk about grass cattle demand, the potential of a trade deal being finalized with China, what that would mean to the cattle market. Let's start, though, by looking back at the trade this past week. The cash-fed cattle market actually gave ground, although the futures trade was relatively strong.
Yeah, that was one kind of perplexing thing. As we've seen on the futures board, a reversal with moderate gains really across the whole cattle complex. 5 of the front 6 live cattle contracts were up $1.30, $1.70, with only the front April month that was up just slightly at 35 cents. Feeder cattle contracts were up 47.5 cents to 145. So fairly optimistic news when we look at the futures market, but the cash trade, when we look regionally, we took $1 to $2 step back. I think some of that is due to we did see larger slaughter supplies on the market. We were about 0.5% above week-ago levels and about 2.5% above year-ago levels. So I think we are starting to see that spring supply come online maybe a little bit earlier. And that did pressure the cash market some.
So it sounds like this is nothing to get overly excited about, this $1 or $2 drawback in the cash-fed trade.
No, I think there's a lot of positive fundamentals in the market. I think it was just the fact that, I think we are seeing a bit of a sluggish cash trade. We've really seen it all spring in the basis levels. Basis, we typically see a real nice rally in March, April, and then another one in May, June, and really we were really pretty muted in that March, April one, and so I think that's just kind of following this trend we're seeing this spring. But I think we are really pointing to possibly stronger cash prices here as we get into this another seasonal rally in the next 2 months.
And one of the things you say may well support that rally in the cash-fed trade, the slaughter weight trend is showing fairly noticeably below a year ago.
They are. So steer dress weights this last week were 12 pounds below a year ago. Heifers down 11 pounds compared to a year ago. And I think we're likely to see those carcass weights kind of continue that downward decline as some calf feds are going to be coming on the market. I think this is one indication that packers have really managed this inventory, really been able to pull some cattle ahead, and we've kept overall product tonnage pretty near year-ago levels and even at some times a little bit lower than year-ago levels. I think one factor in the market, maybe it's a little too early to really note this, but we do see that the Choice Select spread really kind of took a break here the last couple of weeks when we look at that seasonal rally, and so we're pretty tight from that Choice Select spread at about $7.40. That's much lower than year-ago levels, much lower than the 5-year average, and so it's maybe a little bit less incentivizing putting some extra weight on those cattle, and we're seeing them come to market a little bit earlier, but also a little bit lighter. And so I think, that's something to definitely watch here. We know supplies are rather large in the market, but if we can keep some tonnage a little bit off the market, that may help increase prices some.
Well, once again, Lee, we are compelled to talk about a competing meat to beef. That would be pork. And what's going on in the hog market, it continues to head upward, largely due to the issues with African swine fever in China, maybe other influences as well. But at some point, you think that the cattle market will have to follow suit to the high side because of the hog-to-cattle relationship.
Well, I'm having to find new adjectives to really describe where this hog market is headed. And really, we've been on a roller coaster, but that roller coaster has very much been upward here this spring. And really, in the time period of about 25 trading days, we've added about $25 per hundredweight to most contracts for the lean hogs. Why does that matter for the cattle markets? Well, historically, those markets have showed a pretty strong correlation. Not all the time, but that correlation does exist. So I think it's really important to really kind of understand those relationships and what that may mean for the other meat. So we could talk about it from a beef side, or we could talk about it from a pork side. So let's talk about it from a beef side. When we compare the live cattle to the lean hog futures price, really since 2014, kind of the upper limit, so if you divide the live cattle price by the lean hog price, the upper limit is about 2.25. So that means that the cattle price is 2.25 relative to the hog price. As low as it's been, it's about 1.5. Why does that matter? Well, we're about 1.6 right now. And so we're towards the near lower level of that ratio. And so I think what that means is if we continue to see hog prices trend higher, I think that means that the cattle prices will see some spillover support from that. Now, if hog prices do weaken some, we could stay in this relationship and maybe not as high of that correlation. But I think as you continue to see possibility of higher hog prices, I've heard many traders talk about kind of the next resistance level of 110 to 115. If we do see those prices for hogs, especially those summer contracts, that could mean that spillover and higher potential for cattle prices.
Of course, the $64,000 question always is, to what degree will we see spillover support to the cattle sector from what's going on in hogs? That is hard to pin down at this point, isn't it?
It certainly is, and that's definitely only one factor in this. So as analysts, we're always trying to dissect the whole market. I think one other positive impact, or at least that we don't have several fundamental factors weighing on the cattle market. Yes, supplies are larger, but those, all intents and purposes, are expected. Importantly, the demand has been rather strong. I think we could see some even more positive news, hopefully kind of coming down the line. But I think demand has really held up fairly well. And so fundamentally, we're in pretty good shape for the cattle market. This is only just another factor, potentially this spillover, that could add some support to the cattle complex.
Well, further on China, we've heard this record play before, but there are strong suggestions that there may well be a trade deal between the United States and China coming to fruition here fairly soon. And what that means for the beef cattle market, well, it can't hurt anything, that's for sure.
That's certainly the case. And this is one thing that we've been in a 9-month kind of trade conflict here, or, potentially longer if you look about at least the talk of it. It's something that's certainly been weighing on the market, right? And and it is a complex issue. And so I think, I would temper the optimism a little bit that, yes, talks are ongoing. The two trade delegates between the two countries are continuing that dialogue, and that's important. And I think, but overall, this is a very complex issue. Agriculture is only one small component of it, even though it's very important to all of us. So I think, understanding that this could be some positive news. We have seen, China actually buy 50% more beef than year-ago levels, realizing that's still a very small amount, but that has been a positive factor on the market. it's also important that we look at China and the trade deal there, but also realizing that there's trade deals going on around us. So we're looking at the comprehensive progressive trade agreement of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's kind of a tongue twister there, but it's the new TPP, right? And the U.S. is not part of that. And we've seen countries involved in there got tariff relief at the end of 2018. They're going to see another rate decrease as of April 1, and that's potentially impacting some of our trade as we see Japan is in that agreement, and our exports of beef to Japan are down about 23% this year. And so I think, yes, China, that trade deal is very important for several of the commodities that we deal with, but also these other trade agreements are adding up and impacting our trade and have the potential to impact that trade even more.
It's an interesting scenario. We'll watch how this unfolds here very soon. And one last thing here, Lee, as one looks around at least the Kansas feeder cattle auctions this past week, it seems to be apparent anyway that the demand for grass cattle for stocking pasture this summer is picking up, as indicated by higher prices.
And I would especially look at the under 700 pounds, which are the runs really suitable for grazing. We've really seen an uptick in those prices. And I think we could even see more as actually the grass has been delayed a little bit because of the cooler weather and especially the waterlogged soil that we've seen. So I think, we could even see some further stronger demand kind of coming down the pipe here a little bit. I've heard indications that Flint Hill calves haven't been turned out yet, but ranchers are really chomping at the bit, so I think that's going to help with that demand scenario. Also, another factor when I'm really looking at the feeder cattle contract is the premium of those summer and fall contracts to currently where we're at. I think that could really change a little bit of the mindset this year as stocker and backgrounding operations may look to push marketings further down the road to benefit from those higher prices. So when they look at that value of gain calculation, it may add a few months because of the strength we're seeing currently in that futures board.
And by the way, producers, if you'd like to look at that value of gain question, there are tools available, including beefbasis.com, that can help you calculate what might be ahead for those stocker programs. Lee, as always, we appreciate your input, and we will talk again very soon. Many thanks to you.
Thank you.
That from livestock economist at Iowa State University, Lee Schulz. He joins us regularly to talk about the cattle market trends here on Agriculture Today.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. I'm Britton Rucker. We're heading into a pivotal time for nutritional management in your cow herd. And there's certain nutritional guidelines producers need to keep in mind. Discussing more on this topic is cow-calf specialist with K-State Research and Extension, Bob Weaber. Now, Bob, there's really an emphasis on nutritional management to manage cow condition.
Right. Britton, it's great to be here with you this morning. For our cow-calf producers around the state, it has been kind of a really trying winter, both in terms of just the amount of snow and moisture and mud, and it's been just kind of long and arduous. But as we kind of emerge from that and spring green up, I know lots of producers are eager to get cows turned out and calves turned out to grass. But we've kind of been through, both, if we think back to last summer, through a fair chunk of the state kind of drought conditions. Mm-hmm. So kind of an extended period of people started feeding hay early. Many of us are sort of, we're down to the last bale and we're eager to turn cows out. But we need to think about, how do we prepare those cows for the breeding season, which for folks calving in January is already upon us. It's kind of hard to think about that already, but breeding season's here. And, managing those cows in terms of body condition score through breeding season and the later stages of gestation is really important to set those cows up for going into next winter. And one of the things we see is, a lot of cases, drought effects in a cow herd aren't just felt the year of the drought. They're felt for the next year in terms of reproductive performance, and then the calves that are born from those cows the subsequent year. So it can have a really lasting effect. And the way this year is setting up, we've got, in most parts of the state, a pretty full soil profile in terms of moisture. So we should have good, particularly cool season grass starting off here this spring, and then hopefully carry a lot of that into our warm season production. So we've got an opportunity to kind of fix some body condition score issues in our cows if we're really diligent in our management.
And what are you seeing happening to body condition recently?
Yeah, so for a lot of producers, particularly those that calved in maybe January and February, those cows are kind of reaching peak lactation, and so body condition scores are going down. And I've had the opportunity to be traveling around the state a fair bit with some extension meetings, and there's a fair number of kind of thinner cows around as you kind of observe from the roadside. And that's understandable, after the year we've had, but we should think proactively about how do we fix that. And one of the things we should really think about is making sure we're adequate in terms of energy delivery to those cows. Here on early season grass is kind of notorious. If you look at it from the road, it looks like, hey, we're green, we're ready to go, we got 6 inches of growth. But if you go walk through those pastures, they can oftentimes be still pretty sparse in terms of forage availability. So, some supplemental hay still, even those cows may be on pasture, putting some hay out can help meet some energy requirements. And then certainly as we get into summer, things associated with, if we're grazing late warm season grass that's starting to go dormant, protein's taking a nosedive in those species, making sure we supplement protein. Another strategy that I think a lot of producers ought to think about this year is early weaning. If we've got January, February calved cows, July and August represents a good time to wean those calves, maybe even mid-June, depending on how your grass looks, to put body condition score back on those cows before wintertime. We know those cows that are in adequate condition going into winter take less in terms of maintenance requirement, and also will do a better job kind of conceiving and maintaining those calves' pregnancies through the latter part of summer. So being on top of body condition score is really an important aspect. And
going into summer, body condition score management can actually recover. What do you recommend to producers?
Yeah, so one of the things I think we talk a lot in Extension about body condition score, but actually going out and doing it is really the key thing. And we've got a lot of good resources on our ksubeef.org website on body condition scoring and how to do it. And so actually taking some time, I kind of like to make a habit out of things. And so maybe the first of the month or the first week of the month, go through your cows. You don't have to body condition score all of them, but get a good representative sample, maybe 20 or 25% of the cows at minimum. If you're a big operator, scoring 800 cows takes a long time, but scoring 100 or 200 as you go out and check cows and feed can be done pretty quickly. I like a little a tally system, so just take a notepad and write 3, 4, 5, 6 across the top and just do tick marks on them, and that gives you a good, easy way to keep track of that and put the date on it and stick it in your record system so you can kind of monitor over time what's happening. Body condition scoring is really easy, and it gives us a good gauge on kind of what the energy status of those cows is and what the trend has been. So the biggest thing is actually just getting out and doing it. Because
it really could benefit your operation.
Right. So, it wouldn't be uncommon for a fair number of cows to be kind of in the mid-4s at this point in time based on winter. We like to see them in a little better condition than that going into breeding, and certainly as they exit summertime. If those cows are a 4.5 now, it's not inconceivable for them to maybe lose another half a body condition score, which makes them pretty thin going into fall. So making a plan to capture the calories and the nutritional value we've got in some of our warm season grasses or some fall regrowth on cool season grass as a strategy to put body condition score back on cows. And remember, each body condition score is about 80 pounds of body weight. And so if we've got a 4 cow in mid-July, we'd like her to be somewhere in the 5.5 to 6 range going into winter, so that when she comes out of winter and calving next spring, she's a 5.5. We can do that really inexpensively if we just manage the lactation requirement by drying those cows off, providing a little extra protein supplement through dormant season. Those cows will put on half to a pound a day, just no problem at all, and it won't cost very much, and set you up for next year in great shape in terms of body condition score on those cows.
Right, and there are some formulated diets to improve body condition score.
Yep. So one of the things that we think about a lot is how do we use some of the commodity co-products or byproducts, whatever you want to call them, and those can be really effective to meet that protein requirement on cows, particularly in the summer. And delivery can be sometimes a challenge. In the summer we got lots of stuff going on. So pick a strategy. Alternate day or every third day supplementation can work very well to meet those protein requirements and help those cows along. So we don't have to do it every day, but make sure we're kind of getting that extra feed in terms of protein into those cows. So.
And like you mentioned before, there are some tools producers can use to achieve target body condition, especially in calving.
Yep. So again, it's taking the time to build those resources in terms of your own skill set, scoring cows. And we've got, again, at ksubeef.org, several documents on kind of the how-to, plus a little kind of truck visor card you can download and print off that's got the key sort of landmarks to look at to, differentiate, what's the difference between a body score 4 and a body score 5 cow.
And not only focusing on cow condition and body score, you're starting to see a number of bulls are not passing their breeding soundness exam.
Yeah, Britton, that's a great point you bring up. This winter's been not only tough on cows, it's been tough on bulls. And we know both variable weather and really cold weather can really set bulls back in terms of semen quality and their ability to settle cows. And so one of the things that I've been encouraging both seed stock and commercial producers do, even more than usual, I'm always a fan of breeding soundness exams, but this year it might be really, really important. We've seen both in our bulls here at K-State some challenges getting yearling bulls to pass breeding soundness just because of the cold over winter. It takes about somewhere around 60 to 70 days for spermatogenesis to happen. So when we've got a temperature insult, either too hot or too cold to the testicles of bulls, it impacts semen quality, and it takes a pretty substantial amount of time to sort of get past that.
Right.
And so as we think about, breeding season upon us, if we turn out bulls now that aren't good, it may be 60 days before they are good if they are going to recover from that, and that can really set your breeding season back in terms of calving distribution for next year. So I really encourage producers to spend the time and the money to go get bulls checked this season and make sure they're good. For a lot of us, calf losses over winter have been kind of double or a little more than usual. So we're already going to be kind of in a tight situation come fall for calf marketing. Let's not add insult to injury and drag that into next year's calf crop by not having cows settled. So.
Right. So really making sure those bulls are sound and ready to go.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And Beef Improvement Federation is coming up to cattle producers.
Right. So an annual meeting that is, I think, one of the must-attend. It's the must-attend on my list anyway for seed stock and cow-calf producers interested in genetic improvement in their herds. This year, the BIF meeting's being hosted by South Dakota State University and groups in South Dakota. And so the meeting's June 18th through the 21st in Brookings, South Dakota. So it's been a while since we've been to South Dakota, and looking forward to that meeting. Registration's open. If you just go to beefimprovement.org and pick the conference tab, find the registration stuff there.
Very good. Well, body condition score management, as well as checking before you turn out you have sound bulls, is pivotal in a successful operation. Thanks, Bob, for being here.
Britton, thanks so much.
That was Bob Weaber, cow-calf specialist with K-State Research and Extension. And to learn more about the Beef Improvement Federation Research Symposium and Convention, visit beefimprovement.org. Again, those dates are June 18th through the 21st in Brookings, South Dakota. And to access the tools available to producers to achieve target body condition, visit ksubeef.org. Again, that is ksubeef.org. For Agriculture Today, I'm Britton Rucker, and when we return, Eric will have the agricultural news headlines. Also ahead is Tree Tales, followed by this week's Kansas 4-H segment, all here on the K-State Radio Network.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State Research and Extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
You're listening to the Monday edition of Agriculture Today, coming to you from the campus of Kansas State University. Eric Atkinson here. Now, today's agricultural news headlines, these courtesy in part of DTN. Well, President Trump did not announce a trade deal had been reached with China when he met with Chinese Vice Premier Liu He at the White House last Thursday, but he did signal one could be in hand in about 4 weeks. That's a figure that U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer confirmed. The president indicated it could take another 2 weeks to finalize the text once an agreement is reached. Indications are the drafts of the deal currently would give China until the year 2025 to meet some commitments, primarily purchases of U.S. commodities and opening the ability of U.S. companies to buy Chinese firms. Other provisions in the pact reportedly would have a 2029 deadline. Lighthizer made it clear there are still issues remaining. There are major issues left, he said, quoting him, "We are certainly making more progress than we would have thought when we started," in his words. Now, enforcement issues among those that remain to be finalized. China said to still be resisting a U.S. demand that would prevent China from retaliating if the U.S. were to hit China with tariffs in the event they do not live up to the terms of the deal. The issue of U.S. tariffs currently in place on Chinese goods also remains a sticking point. With good chances of continued flooding across the Midwest this spring, the areas hit by the devastating floods in Nebraska, Iowa, parts of Missouri, and Kansas find some silver lining from the latest National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Flood and Climate Outlook released last week. While the chances are good for additional flooding, Kevin Lowe from NOAA's Missouri River Basin Forecast Center said that snowpack in the mountain regions is reaching its peak accumulation for the year. In addition, Lowe said mountain snowpack is reported average to below average, with mountain runoff expected to be average to below average through the month of September. He said, quoting here, "That's a good thing, but there is an increased chance over much of the Missouri River Basin of flooding. We remain vulnerable," in his words. In the lower Missouri Basin, Lowe said he doesn't expect there to be long-term flooding this season, although chances of flooding remain higher than normal across the basin, vulnerable to spring rains, of course. NOAA said moderate-level flooding is likely in the lower basin during the next 3 months as a result of increased thunderstorm activity. And the flooding chances remained higher and more widespread than last year and in several years across much of the Midwest, according to NOAA. As of last Wednesday, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers reported it had used about 43% of its flood storage in the Missouri River Basin. Some of the good news, perhaps, is NOAA is calling for quicker moving storm systems across the flooded regions, which would reduce the chances of flooding rains. Meantime, lawmakers are continuing negotiations on a supplemental disaster bill that would cover, in part, the flooding issues. The USDA's Gary Crawford has more.
Farmers hit by various natural disasters over the last couple of years are still waiting for Congress to pass a disaster bill that might help them out. At the moment, it's stalled over an issue of special aid for Puerto Rico. A few days ago, Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue told reporters in Washington,
"It's time to put politics aside and provide relief."
On Friday, he was at Fort Valley University in Georgia with his cousin, Georgia Senator David Perdue, and reporters asked them about the disaster bill. Senator Perdue's answer,
"We're hot and heavy every night in negotiations, so I'm very hopeful that here in the next very, very short period of time that we'll get some kind of compromise."
Before leaving for Georgia, Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue told reporters in lieu of the disaster bill, of course,
"We're implementing every disaster relief that we have in the current farm bill. That's the Livestock Indemnity Program, the EQIP programs, and the Emergency Conservation programs, and we're doing that as we speak."
In Washington, Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
In other headlines today, landowners wishing to enroll acres in the USDA's Conservation Stewardship Program can now do so during this latest funding period. More on that from the USDA's Rod Bain.
As the new sign-up period begins for USDA's Conservation Stewardship Program, Natural Resources Conservation Service Deputy Chief Jimmy Bramblett notes some improvements to CSP via the 2018 Farm Bill.
In previous farm bills, we had an $18 per acre cap associated with the overall program administration and a total acreage of about 7.9 million acres. Now, this gives us as an agency a lot more flexibility just to administer, much like EQIP and all other conservation programs, with a primary focus on the financial assistance and the dollar limitations associated with the authorization.
Additional flexibility is created through providing the funding for the entire 5-year CSP contract up front, higher payment rates for specific conservation practices such as cover crops, and specific support for organic and transitioning to organic production activities. Applications for CSP enrollments for fiscal year 2019 funding should be submitted by May 10th at local NRCS offices. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
And next up, our regular Monday feature from the Kansas Forest Service here at Kansas State University. Tree Tales, and with that this week, K-State Forester Charlie Barden. Charlie?
Well, spring is finally here, with the daffodils and hyacinths in bloom, and the tulips are well on their way. Now is also a great time to go for a walk in the woods. It's not too hot, and the filtered sunlight coming through the trees is easy on the eyes. Soon the wild plum and redbuds will be in bloom, followed by the buckeye and wild cherry. Looking down, you will see a multitude of wildflowers growing and blooming, like violets and bluets. Most woodland flowers grow and bloom before the tree leaves fully expand to shade them, while their open prairie counterparts bloom during the heat of summer. When we get a good soaking April rain, it will be prime time to look for edible morel mushrooms. These delicacies are usually found in streamside woodlands under elm and cottonwood trees. Be sure to hunt them with an experienced morel picker for the first time, though, and don't eat any mushroom without confirming that it is a safe species. After the spring rain is also when the cedar apple rust galls open to spread their spores. This is also a visual reminder to apply fungicides to susceptible crab apples or hawthorns in your own home landscape. So this spring, go for a walk in the woods to see if you can find any visual or edible treats. If it is a windy day, though, be alert for broken branches still hanging from winter storms. These will continue to break loose and fall and could be hazardous. Be warned, too, that ticks will be getting active as temperatures warm up, and mosquitoes also, so take precautions with clothing or repellent to protect yourself from becoming a treat for the local bug population. You've been listening to Tree Tales. I'm Charles Barden, Forest with K-State Research and Extension.
Thanks, Charlie. In addition to our daily broadcast, more and more folks are taking advantage of our podcast service. To listen to that podcast version of Agriculture Today, visit agtoday.net. You can subscribe to the program's podcast by simply tapping the subscribe button, and brand new episodes of the broadcast will then automatically arrive on your mobile device every weekday. So check it out at agtoday.net, and we'll return shortly here on the K-State Radio Network. Legal and financial concerns surround the day-to-day management of the agricultural industry. Producers, ag creditors, and USDA agencies rely on Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. If you've received an adverse decision from the USDA or have an ag credit concern, call today, 800-321-3276, or visit us online, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services, exploring options, generating solutions.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us on Agriculture Today. Along with Eric Atkinson, I'm Jeff Wickman. 4-H Campference is an annual event for youth ages 12 to 14 who are ready to take 4-H to the next level. The camp and conference combines games with time to talk, listen, and learn. Campference is being held June 23rd through the 26th at Rock Springs 4-H Center. In addition to camp activities, Southeast Area 4-H Specialist Beth Hinshaw says that youth will be participating in a variety of workshops and learning more about leadership as well as the opportunities that lie ahead in the 4-H program. Beth, I like the way you describe this event because you call it a between-agers, which is youth ages 12 to 14. It'll be taking place at Rock Springs in June, and this is really an opportunity for them to do workshops and also do some camping activities.
Definitely. And when you hear the word Campference, that kind of tells you something different is going on. And it very much is like a camp, just from the standpoint that we're at beautiful Rock Springs and we get to take part in some of those traditional activities. But the other part of that word is like conference. And so, when we think about some of the things that 4-Hers do as they get a little bit older, there's opportunities to have workshops and speakers and, to learn in some other kinds of ways besides camp activities.
If I remember right, this is put on by the Kansas 4-H Youth Leadership Council?
It is, and they have been busy planning this actually since January of this year. Their theme this year is Leadership on the High Seas, so it's going to be a bit of a pirate theme. We typically have a speaker come back each year who's been a former youth council member, and so that is set. And then there will be some leadership workshops, and those all work around that theme that they have as well. And then they choose what they think are the most popular camp activities to do. So for Campference, typically we do canoeing, mountain bikes, leadership adventure course, archery, and then sometimes horses and arts and crafts as well.
So this gives them a chance to do a little bit of both, like we said, so that they're not only learning about leadership opportunities, but they're also just kind of having some fun.
Exactly. And we really like that it is such a small age range. Everything that we do is very much focused on what's age appropriate for 12 to 14-year-olds. And, while we'll typically have 120 in our Campference, that's still a small enough group to really get to know everybody that's there.
And it's funny you mentioned that the space is limited because you do have a large number, but it always fills up.
Yes, we have been so fortunate that Campference has filled probably the last 5 years. And it's just one of those things I just really encourage people, if you want to go, register early because we don't want you to be disappointed.
Go back and talk a little bit more about the workshops. Are those led by volunteers? Are those led by the staff? How do you handle all of the different workshops?
There are a variety of things that happen. Sometimes we'll bring in outside facilitators for those. Sometimes the youth council members themselves will actually do some extra studying in some area and put together a workshop. So it just really depends, and it's a little different every year.
So not only is the Youth Leadership Council putting this together, they're also there on site and participating as well.
Most definitely. They actually serve as our counselors for the event, and then certainly they've been the ones who have planned it as well, and then they have a lot of responsibilities throughout the event as well, either for the workshop pieces or for the different program pieces as well.
In addition to being between the ages of 12 and 14, is there something else that might say someone is ready for this type of a camp?
Well, a lot of our county camps or, camps at Rock Springs, a lot of those end at either 12 or 13. And certainly you can go to Discovery Days at 13 and some of our other state events, but sometimes young people might not feel ready to go to a great big state event. So I would say one thing is those young people who might want a smaller environment, 120 probably or less. As we said, it's a transition. So you've done camp a long time and you still love camp, but you're ready to transition to something else.
And I guess the thing we want to kind of emphasize here is this is not just fun. This is also learning and really building those leadership skills that they can build upon through their remaining years in 4-H.
Most definitely. And the fun thing about this is they make friends that they're going to have the rest of their lives. And, some of the things that we really work on in Kansas 4-H are that sense of belonging. And that's really important for those young people who are between 12 and 14. And then we have, lots of opportunity, of course, whenever you go away for independence. And so we really focus on those two things, which we know are good for kids.
Now, is there a registration fee associated with this?
There is. $280 is the registration fee, and that includes camp, or Campference, I should say. Everybody gets a T-shirt and a water bottle, lodging at Rock Springs, meals, program fees, all of those kinds of things.
Boy, but you're going to go through a lot of food.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. And at Rock Springs, it's always very good.
Especially breakfast is what I hear. Tell me one more time about the registration process, because we do want to make sure that people get in early so that they don't lose out on the space.
Most definitely. You will register on the Kansas 4-H website. That's www.kansas4h.org. We actually have a register button, so you can register for your events right there. I'll also have something on that front page under What's Hot where it will take you straight to all the Campference information. So that's what we suggest that you do. That should be available for people to actually go on and register.
That's Southeast Area 4-H Specialist Beth Hinshaw. Again, for more information about Campference, June 23rd through the 26th at Rock Springs 4-H Center, go to kansas4h.org and click on the Register Here button. Online registration is open until May 15th. However, youth interested in attending Campference are encouraged to register as soon as possible because space is limited. And don't forget to listen to the podcast version of Agriculture Today. Visit agtoday.net, agtoday.net, or using an app on your mobile device, type these search keywords, Agriculture, Today, Kansas, and you'll find this program. By tapping the subscribe button, brand new episodes of Agriculture Today will automatically arrive on your device. That's agtoday.net. Along with Eric Atkinson, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.